Dean Martin did not rattle easily. This was part of what made him Dean Martin. He had been performing in Las Vegas since the 1950s. He had seen everything the city could produce. He had survived Frank Sinatra, the Rat Pack, Hollywood, the transition from one decade of American popular culture to the next. He was, by the late 1960s, a man who had been in the room for every version of the extraordinary and who had learned to receive it without changing his expression. So the night Dean Martin saw Tom Jones walk out onto a Las Vegas stage and felt the room shift in a way he had not expected, that mattered. Not because Dean Martin was surprised exactly, because Dean Martin did not surprise easily. And he was surprised. Tom Jones had arrived in Las Vegas in 1967. He was 31 years old. He was coming in as a headline act at the Flamingo Hotel. The Flamingo was a real room. It required a real performer. The booking was the industry's way of saying that Tom Jones had been assessed and found sufficient. But Las Vegas was different from all of those assessments. Las Vegas was Dean Martin's world. And in Dean Martin's world, sufficiency was not the standard. The standard was something harder to define and easier to recognize. The specific quality of a performer who could hold a Las Vegas showroom, not once, not on a good night, but every night. Against the specific quality of resistance that Las Vegas audiences brought to a performance because they had seen so many of them. Dean Martin came to Tom Jones's opening night. Dean Martin, in the late 1960s, was a man who had earned the right to do nothing he did not want to do. His career was at a level where everything arranged itself around him. He moved through Las Vegas at his own pace, and the Las Vegas world accommodated itself to his movement. He did not need to go to other people's opening nights. He decided Tom Jones was worth the walk. This was, in its own quiet way, the first piece of information the evening would produce. Before a note had been sung, the fact that Dean Martin had decided to be there was information. Dean Martin had built his relationship to Las Vegas over 2 decades. He had been part of defining what Las Vegas was. The Sands Hotel in the 1950s and early 1960s, the Rat Pack shows, the way Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. had turned the Las Vegas showroom into the center of American entertainment, this was not simply a career accomplishment. It was the construction of a world. Dean Martin was one of the architects of that world, and the world he had helped build had specific standards. Specific standards for what a Las Vegas performer needed to bring to the stage. Specific standards for what the audience deserved to receive. He had watched hundreds of performers come through Las Vegas. He had watched some of them meet the standards. He had watched others fail. He had watched failure of many kinds. Failure of nerve, failure of preparation, failure of the specific thing that Las Vegas required and that no amount of preparation could substitute for, which was the capacity to be fully present in a room full of people who had seen everything. When Dean Martin decided to go to the Flamingo that night, he was carrying 30 years of those observations with him. He sat down in the audience with the weight of 30 years of knowing what he was looking at. And he waited to see if the room was going to give him something worth the 30 years of knowing. Dean Martin watched. The room opened up the way Las Vegas rooms opened when the performer was equal to the room. The audience shifted into something less managed, something more genuine. Something that Tom Jones had been producing in rooms since he was a teenager singing in Pontypridd, and that he was now producing in a showroom in Las Vegas. in front of one of the men who had defined what Las Vegas showrooms were supposed to produce. After the show, Dean Martin came backstage. The specific quality of the visit that Dean Martin made to Tom Jones's dressing room that night was not the quality of a courtesy call. He told Tom Jones what he had seen. He was not effusive. Dean Martin did not do effusive. But he was specific. And in Las Vegas, from a man of Dean Martin's standing, specificity was the highest compliment available. He had watched the room open. He had watched it shift from the managed reception of opening night audience to something more real. He told Tom Jones that what he had done, the specific thing he had done to the room, was the thing that Las Vegas required and that very few performers could actually deliver. Tom Jones was 31 years old. He had been told many things about his performances, by audiences and critics and managers and record labels. But this was Dean Martin, in a dressing room at the Flamingo, telling him in specific language what he had seen. And what Tom Jones had done to the room was the right thing. That was the night Las Vegas became Tom Jones's city. The contractual claim, the booking, the residency, the name on the marquee had preceded this moment. But contracts are not the same as belonging. Contracts are what the industry produces when it has made a decision about someone. Belonging is what the room produces when it has made a decision. And the room at the Flamingo on that opening night in 1967 had made its decision. Tom Jones belonged in Las Vegas. Dean Martin, who was the room's most authoritative witness, had confirmed it. What made Dean Martin's visit to the dressing room significant was not only what he said, it was what his presence there communicated to everyone in the Las Vegas world who learned about it. And in Las Vegas, everyone learned about everything. The information that Dean Martin had gone backstage to talk to Tom Jones after the show, not as a courtesy, not as an obligation, but because he had seen something worth acknowledging, traveled through the city within hours. It traveled through the hotel staff and the musicians and the agents and the managers and the showroom operators and the other performers. And everywhere it traveled, it carried the same meaning. Dean Martin had seen the Tom Jones show and had gone backstage and spoken to him. In Las Vegas in 1967, this was the equivalent of a formal certification, not the paperwork kind, the kind that the city actually ran on, the kind that came from the people who had built the standards deciding, publicly and specifically, that a new arrival had met them. The kind that opened doors that contracts alone could not open. The kind that changed the way the city understood who you were. Tom Jones had arrived in Las Vegas as a successful British act with chart records and a good booking. After that night, he was something different. He was a Las Vegas performer. The distinction was specific and real. And Dean Martin had been the one to make it. Word had reached him about the Flamingo, specifically about what was happening in the Flamingo's showroom in the weeks before the opening. Word traveled in Las Vegas with the specific efficiency of a world where everyone was watching everything. The word that had reached Dean Martin was that something real was preparing itself. He had heard that word before about people who turned out to be adequate. He had occasionally heard it about people who turned out to be something more. He had decided to go and find out which this was. The showroom was full. Opening nights in Las Vegas were always full. The industry people, the hotel people, the friends of management. But there was also, in the Flamingo that night, a quality of actual anticipation. The room wanted something to happen. This is not always the case with Las Vegas opening nights, where the room is frequently there to confirm a booking rather than to receive a performance. Tom Jones walked out onto the stage, and the room understood before he had sung a note that something different was in front of it. This is the hardest thing to describe about Tom Jones as a live performer. It was not the voice alone. The voice was in the records. You could hear the voice anywhere. What you could not hear anywhere except in the room was the complete alignment of everything Tom Jones brought to a performance. The voice, the physicality, the specific quality of attention he paid to the audience. The way the attention became a circuit between performer and room, that both powered and was powered by what was happening on the stage. Dean Martin was sitting in the audience. He was there as a colleague, as a professional observer, as a man who had been watching performers in Las Vegas for 15 years, and who knew precisely what he was looking at when he was looking at something real. What he was looking at was something real. The show moved through its sections. Tom Jones built it the way he built all his shows, starting with the knowledge that the room needed time to trust what it was receiving, moving through that time with the patience and the power of a performer who had learned in the working men's clubs of Wales that you did not earn a room with the first song. You earned it with the 10th. You earned it with consistency, with the demonstration, song by song, that what the room was receiving was not a performance of greatness, but actual greatness, which is the only thing that Las Vegas audiences, in the end, would accept as real. The confirmation did something more private than change. It settled something. The specific uncertainty of a performer who has not yet been received by the room that matters most does not announce itself. It lives quietly, underneath the confidence in the performance and the apparent ease of a man who has been performing since he was a teenager. Dean Martin's specific words, said in a dressing room at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas in 1967, closed that uncertainty. After that night, Tom Jones knew, not with the knowing of charts and contracts, but with the knowing of having been seen by someone who knew how to see, that he was in the right place. There is something in the geography of Las Vegas that the photographs cannot capture, but that the performers who lived inside it understood. The city was not simply a place where performances happened. It was a world with its own hierarchies and its own standards and its own way of determining what was real. You could be technically accomplished anywhere. What you could only be in Las Vegas, if you were equal to the city, was completely present, night after night, without the relief of a different city next week. Las Vegas was only what you did in the room, and the room remembered. Tom Jones was in the room. Dean Martin had seen him be in the room. And the room had decided, on that opening night in 1967, that Tom Jones was something it had not often seen. It had seen impressive. It had seen accomplished. It had seen technically extraordinary. What it had seen in Tom Jones was something past all of those categories. A performer who was entirely, completely present, who was giving the room everything the room required, who was receiving what the room gave back and using it and returning it transformed. Dean Martin did not say this often. He had a long career of not saying it. The people who heard him say it remembered that they had heard it, and the person he said it to never forgot. The Las Vegas years that followed were many. They were long. They were packed with performances and residencies and the accumulated weight of a career that had found its home and was living in it. All of those years began, in some sense, on that opening night, in the room, with Dean Martin in the audience, and the room opening the way rooms open when they have been given what they needed.